Hey everyone, Maitreya Wolf here with the Art of Soulful Living vlog. Thank you so much for joining me. It's an honor to have your presence and attention right now, and I pray that I bring something of value to your consciousness today with our time together. Thank you for joining me. I want to talk about holding the dream of what's possible, and I want to approach that through the lens of four questions, or four considerations, we could say. One is, where are we? Two, how did we get here? Three, where are we going? Four, how will we get there? Where are we is in a state of reckoning. How did we get here is through choosing violence and dominion as our way of building our collective reality. Where are we going? I believe and I pray with the whole of my being, and I live in dedication to the possibility that we are moving towards a greater order of beauty. How will we get there? There's a lot to explore there. It has a lot to do with the skills of descent, and it has a lot to do with resourcing ourselves for a long journey of quite possibly a lot of very, very heavy lifting, and hopefully an equal measure of joy, but definitely a lot of heavy lifting is on our plates for the near future, I believe, and possibly for the extended future, and expanding our capacity to stay connected when we have such a well-honed impulse for severance. So let's explore these four topics under the umbrella of holding the dream of what's possible. My dream, and I know that this is a dream for many, many of my community members. I'm blessed to exist inside of a pretty unique subculture, counterculture, current in the collective fluid body of the world, and we as a whole ascribe to the principle of beauty in many different ways, and we are devoted to the principle of beauty in many different ways. And for most of us, we believe that we all emerge from and are components of source, divinity, the holy, whatever you want to call it, God, goddess, anything else, that we're all elements of God on a soul's journey back into totality. It's interesting to see how we all manifest this particular cosmology, because we are also the children of the empire, so we're living in a kind of creation story void in some ways, but more on that later. But this is the dream. My particular version of this dream is that humanity will come home to itself, and humanity will come home to itself as a member of the family of life with Earth, and of the family of the Earth life. And that life in and of itself, life on Earth, will have the space, the breath, the opportunity to flourish and to thrive. That we will live beautifully and joyfully. That our differences will be cause for celebration. That our diversity will be fundamental to our psychic and spiritual wealth. And that our integration with the greater whole of the planet and the life of the world will be complete. That we will be in relationship with the earth again, and not some abstracted, estranged, alienated thing like we are now. This is my version of the dream. This is the dream that I'm holding on to. This is the possibility that I am living my life towards. So I come from that place, and then I consider these four questions. Where are we? How did we get here? Where are we going? And how will we get there? Under the umbrella of this dream. because that's my lens. Where are we going and how will we get there? That's where I'm going, and that's what I want to know about how to get there. So let's talk about where are we. It's June of 2020. I'm in North America. I'm in Northern California, and my country right now is in a state of extreme and, for me, very exciting upheaval. And I consider this to be a time of reckoning at the most profound level. We are reckoning with how this society is structured, and we are entering into this conversation through the lens of race relations. And it is a powerful portal into this conversation. It is a very powerful portal into this conversation. It's a very explosive entry point for the conversation because there's an incredible legacy of rage, sorrow, grief, pain, and fear alive in communities of color in this nation. And they're also just fucking done with the way it's happening. So we're in this incredible moment of reckoning. And I, for one, find it very exciting because I feel like we have approached this threshold many times in the course of my life, but we've never actually crossed over it into the realm of like, okay, we're done with how it's been and we're changing it now. We're going to start changing it now. And we're not backing down, we're not giving up, we're not going away, we're not going back to business as usual. We are changing this thing now. So that is an incredible place to be. How did we get here? We got here when society, the architects of society, chose the path of dominion through violence as the fundamental developmental principle for society. That choice, and there was a particular moment in history, and forgive me, I can't remember off the top of my head when it was, but it was back in the biblical era. There was a particular moment in history when a woman, a pagan noblewoman named Hypatia, was murdered by a mob of Christian zealots. And it was that act is understood to be the end of a particular era in our collective history and the introduction of the Dark Ages, essentially, when Christianity went on the rampage against life and the earth-based cultures of first Europe and then the world. And that led us progressively. That has been a steady progression to where we are now, where, the earth-based cultures of Europe were torn to shreds. The Inquisition lasted 2 centuries. That is many, many generations. That's something like 10 generations. It lasted 2 centuries and destroyed the earth-based cultures of Europe. It drove paganism and animism in Europe underground. It tore apart communities. It murdered millions of mostly women. It devastated generation after generation after generation of children who watched their mothers and sometimes their fathers being tortured and cursed and ultimately murdered as public spectacle. It utterly just waved a scythe through the earth-based cultures of Europe. And then those people with that epigenetic wound very alive in their body memories and in their ancestral threads, then those people eventually either fled or migrated out of Europe, and they quote unquote discovered this thing, the New World, and they came here and they were so desperate for somewhere to be, and they were so epigenetically drenched in trauma, violence, and blood that they tore their way through this land, tore it to shreds. North America and South America tore it to shreds, destroyed civilizations and cultures that were here, murdered the people, bastardized their cultures, just violated, in every sense of the word, everything that was here. Devastated the wildlife, devastated the land, devastated the waters, devastated the forests. Just tore their way into somewhere new to be. And in the midst of the devastation of the land and the devastation of the native cultures of this land, north and south, then they started to steal Africans from Africa. They started to abduct Africans and bring them here in chains to do forced labor until they died. And they drove the men into the ground. They raped the women and bred children, which they considered to be livestock. I mean, the people were livestock. And then, built like the South and just conquered everything else. And it's just a fucking disaster. It's a fucking disaster as a foundation, right? And there's, of course, more, but these are some of the major points in this consideration of how did we get to where we are. How we got to where we are is an extremely long history of trauma that was inflicted upon everybody, from this concept of dominion through violence. And it has finally reached its breaking point. The subjugation of nature, the subjugation of women, the subjugation of everybody except for rich white men. The unsustainability of society on these levels where only the tiniest fraction of society benefits and everybody else struggles and suffers and doesn't have what they need. And the earth is just like being torn to shreds by this entire approach to living, this entire relationship with life and living. And it has finally reached its breaking point. And that's how we got to where we are. We're in a state of reckoning, and we got here through adopting the modality of dominion through violence and inflicting that wholesale and having that become a progressively more and more and more integrated tool in how we relate to life in the world. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. The modern world is a fucking disaster. It is imminently imperiled from every direction. Psychically, spiritually, environmentally, socially. It is imperiled from every direction. It is so terrifying to be alive right now. And it is so incredibly exciting because I believe, where are we going? I believe we have swung so far into the realm of depravity and insanity that we are headed back in another direction towards beauty. And I mean, I'm talking about like cosmic cycles, planetary cycles, these enormous long cycles of time. I'm not talking about our tiny little lives. I'm talking about generations, millennia. We've been in these systems of dominion and violence and oppression for hundreds and thousands of years. And they are reaching their breaking point, and when we go over this threshold, we are headed towards a greater order of beauty, if we're not headed towards certain annihilation. Because, the planet could just heat up another few degrees and then the whole thing is moot. But on a social level, on a human level. I believe we're heading towards a greater order of beauty. So how will we get there from where we are? Because the fundamental structure of society is diseased. It's utterly and completely diseased. It can't be salvaged. It can't be remediated. You can't instill an egalitarian society inside of a hierarchical social structure. It doesn't work. Hierarchical social structures are about power at the top and submission at the bottom. And there's only a tiny top and there's a massive amount of bottom. So you can't take these fundamental principles and suddenly or you can't take the forms that this thing has generated and then suddenly just supplant it with egalitarian forms or ideas. There's territory between those poles. And that territory is what we've just stepped inside of. So we're making a journey. And I believe it's going to progress as a journey of descent for a while before it becomes a journey of ascent again. Why do I believe this? Because, for one thing, power doesn't just give up because it's the right thing to do. Power's not going to say, oh yeah, it's not right that, like Jeff Bezos is not going to suddenly say like, oh yeah, you're right. It's not right that I'm a trillionaire. It's not right that I have so much when most people don't have enough. It's not right that I'm taking so much when the earth is hurting so badly. Yeah, let me do something different. Jeff Bezos has had how long's Amazon been around? For 15 years or something. Jeff Bezos has never given a shit about doing the right thing. Jeff Bezos is into getting rich. Just like Bill Gates, just like all these other CEOs, they're not about sharing what they have. They're about securing what they have and forwarding their own agendas. In the case of Bill Gates and his vaccine obsession, just fucking God, having all the money in the world to run the World Health Organization, and it can happen that suddenly this random computer programmer is legitimized as the authority on vaccines in the midst of the pandemic because he has the money to be there. That's all. Anyway, so there's territory between where we are and where we're going, and the reason I believe it's going to be a descent is because power doesn't give up voluntarily. Just like power doesn't give up voluntarily. Power doesn't step down voluntarily. Power secures itself. Systems try to maintain themselves, and we are living inside of a system of domination and control that is not interested in giving up power. So how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? How do we get to a world that is livable and beautiful for all people and for all life? How do we get there? The first thing we need is the skills of dissent, which in a modern Western country are not in abundant supply. We don't have a lot of skills of dissent. We are a death-phobic culture, society. We're not even a culture, at least not here in the United States of America. This isn't a culture, it's a society. And we're death-phobic, so we fundamentally fear anything that feels like death because we don't have a holy context for holding it or engaging with it. We don't have a social context that supports it. We don't have a social context that celebrates us for having made the journey once we, return to the village, as it were. But the skills of dissent are crucial to what we're going through because there is so much relinquishing needed for us to travel well through these times. So let me introduce a story. Okay? Let's talk about the caterpillar and the butterfly. You know this story, right? Everybody knows this story. So a caterpillar is this gorgeous little beast. It's a little creepy, crawly, furry thing that it eats. Caterpillars just eat everything they can get their mouths on. They're actually so destructive to plants and trees. They just eat everything they can get their mouths on, and they can get their mouths on a lot in the course of their short lives as caterpillars. They just devour, they just plow through things, they devour them, devour, until they become so drunk on their consumption that they stop and they wrap themselves in a cocoon. And they go to sleep. They go into their dream time. And in their dream time, they begin to dissolve. And they dissolve. They melt completely. They completely dissolve into a liquid that is full of the most magical things. It is full of something called the imaginal cells. The imaginal cells of the butterfly. They are the bridge point between the caterpillar and the butterfly that it is becoming. So the caterpillar melts down. It goes into complete annihilation. And in that annihilated, dissolved state, these imaginal cells activate and they begin to create a butterfly out of this fluid soup. This nutrient soup. And eventually the butterfly is completely created. The caterpillar is gone. The thing that entered the cocoon is gone. And the butterfly wakes up from the dream. And it spreads its wings, splits open the cocoon, and flies forth into the world as a life bearer. The caterpillar was a consumer. It just ate everything. And then dissolved and became a life bearer, a nectar drinker, a pollinator, something that helps life to carry on. We as a collective have just entered the cocoon. We as a collective have just entered the cocoon, and we are beginning to dissolve. And I could be wrong, but I believe that this dissolving is going all the way. And I don't know the time frame. I truly, truly pray that the caterpillar will become the butterfly in the course of my life. And I believe that it's possible, but it could take a good long time, because God knows it took us thousands of years to get to where we are. But magic works on its own time frame, so you never know. So we have just entered the cocoon and we are dissolving, and so we need the skills of descent. We need to be able to die in a state of empowered humility. Empowered humility is a principle that's incredibly important to me. Empowered humility is about showing up at the very deepest level. Humility, I heard once an interesting take on humility. It said humility doesn't compare. And at first it didn't really ring for me, but the more I've contemplated humility over the course of my life, the more that actually does land for me. Humility doesn't compare. In the way of humility doesn't make hierarchical values for things. Humility holds everything as value. Everything is valuable. Everything is valid. So empowered humility, people can conflate humility with submission, and it's not the same thing. Empowered humility is when we sit up in the full strength of our being and meet what we are being handed, or what we are seeing, or what our own, personal revelatory process is, or our collective revelatory process. We meet that with curiosity and respect, valuing it for the very fact that it's there. So empowered humility is an incredibly potent place to sit as a participant in the unfolding of the world, because empowerment also has to do with choosing your role, choosing the nature of your participation, making choices. Not I have to, but I choose to. I choose to. Empowered humility is a principle that came to me in the course of medicine work. I used to sit in ayahuasca ceremonies, and ayahuasca is a very strong, very, very strong substance. I really spent many nights curled up in a ball feeling very overwhelmed by what I was experiencing. And progressively over time, I began to cultivate the capacity, literally, just basically, to sit up with the nausea, with the incredible sensory overload of the experience, with the incredible power of the spirit of that being that ayahuasca is. Over time, I learned to sit up and to greet what was being shown to me, what was being handed to me, what was being given to me, regardless of how I felt about it, regardless of whether I liked it or not, whether I wanted it or didn't. I could meet it. I could meet it sitting up in all of my overwhelm. I could meet it sitting up. And I could take it into my hands or into my heart or into my consciousness and actually be in an active, empowered relationship with it. A discerning relationship. A communicative, collaborative relationship. A relationship of equals. So this skill is vastly important for us as a collective right now, empowered humility, because we are going to be facing some seriously difficult material as we make this transition from a world based on dominion through violence to a world based on communion and collaboration, creative co-creation, as we say, or collaborative co-creation, as we say. I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think there could be moments of ease within it. There will be so many moments of beauty within it, but this is going to be some serious work. And, people sometimes get a little lazy and don't want to do that kind of work. People don't want to do the work of deconstructing white privilege or white supremacy in themselves. People don't want to do the work of deconstructing power structures. People don't want to do the work of dealing with their particular part of how the world is structured and how they perpetuate the world, the way the world is structured. There are a lot of things that we're going to get handed that we're not going to have the option to put down, that are going to be very, very difficult to deal with. So we need that capacity of empowered humility. We need to be able to hear things we don't want to hear and stand up, sit up straight, and meet them. And we need to be able to make choices based on our values. And this is something else that's really strong for me right now, is that the explosive nature of these conversations right now, especially that so many of them are happening through social media, which is so disappointing to me. So many things are happening on social media. Like, we're in the midst of this incredible conversation, a conversation about racism, the foundation of this nation, that empowers a teeny bit of a few and just puts everyone else through a nonstop living hell, we're in the midst of this conversation of really trying to deconstruct this, really trying to understand this, really trying to decipher what is our way out of this. And we're having these conversations so much on Facebook. It's so fucking stupid. It makes me so angry. And I see people weaponizing their opinions and just savaging their relationships, being so coarse with what they say, and then being so brutal with how they respond to what they've seen. It's so disheartening. It's so disheartening. And this is what I mean about like the skills that we're going to need to do this work. You know, one of the skills we're going to need is we're going to have to recreate the skill of civil discourse. We're going to have to recreate the skill of respectfully disagreeing. We're going to have to recreate the skill of having loaded conversations gracefully. And I'm not saying like, you know, plenty of people have all of those skills, but we have to get off social media. Please, if you take nothing else from this half an hour or 40 minutes that I'm sharing with you right now, please take this directive. Do not have these conversations on social media. Don't do it. Don't fling your opinions around like it's knowledge or wisdom, because it's not. Don't be violent with your community members. Don't make war with your allies. Take the conversation out of the dissociated realm of social media and have the conversation in person with an agreement to be patient, graceful, respectful. You know, anger can be there, all the things can be there, they will be there, but not violence. We can't be violent with each other. We can't continue to inflict wounds on each other as we make this journey towards a new possibility, towards a new collective possibility. We've got to stop wounding each other. We've got to stop with the judgment. We've got to stop with the criticism. We've got to stop with the you're so bad because of the things you think and feel and the way you talk and all this other stuff. None of us are coming to this conversation as masters. The fact that we're coming to the conversation at all is radical in and of itself. And we have to be kind to each other and recognize like we're in the midst of an incredible collective work that we're all doing together. We have to remember how to be inclusive, how to be respectful, how to take each other's perspectives and experiences into account as we go through all of this. And these are serious things to remember when we've gotten as dissociated and disconnected as we are after 3 months of social shutdown and, 15 years of social media steadily degrading the nature of our relationships and the natures of how we communicate. So we're going to need the skills of dissent, and we're going to need to put down the sword of severance. Because if we really believe what we believe, if we really believe that we're on the way to a better world together or on the way to annihilation, then everybody is coming. This is something that I've really been struggling with in myself, because severance has been a very, very real and immediate tool for me in the course of my life. It's just like, I don't like it, piss off. But what I realized is like, I have this dream that I spoke of at the beginning. The dream where we exist in love, which I don't mean like this tyranny of harmony, fluffball, white light, absence of conflict thing. I just mean like, we live together beautifully and beautifully with the earth. If I really believe in that, then I cannot throw anyone away. Because for one thing, the fundamental reality of it is that even if I throw them away, they're still here. They're still here. They're still a part of the world. They didn't go anywhere. I just turned my back on them. And I severed the relationship. I destroyed the possibility that exists within relationship to actually do this alchemical work of transforming from a caterpillar to a butterfly. That is an alchemical process. And the way it happens is in the crucible, the cocoon of relationship. This is all about relationship. Racism is about relationship. Environmental devastation is about relationship. The subjugation of women is about relationship. The tension between nations is about relationship. This is all about relationship. And relationship is the crucible in which the transformations will happen. And the relations that we have, those ones are important. I'm trying to find my way into deep appreciation for it. I have one friend, dear friend, who believes in QAnon and is an avid Trump supporter. And I could never sever this person from my life. She is utterly, utterly important to me. And I am so uncomfortable with her views and her beliefs. But this is an incredible opportunity for me to sit in relationship with this realm of experience and find our common ground. Find our common ground and find our peace and find how we both fit into the great story of the world. Because for as long as someone's here, they're here. And as we've seen with the fundamental vilification of black and brown men in particular, and black and brown people across the board, men and women across the board, but when we fundamentally vilify someone, anyone, for anything, then we push them in to that realm of manifestation. We push them to be that thing. We push them to be that thing. We push them to be that thing. And I know it's like the weirdest, hardest thing ever to think of holding our hearts open to the possibility for a white supremacist or a neo-Nazi or a rapist or a cop who has a long record of shooting brown-skinned people and raping brown-skinned women. It is the strangest, most difficult thing in the world to think about, like, actually staying in relationship with someone like that. But that's where this is going to change. Because if we keep severing, this is the point, if we keep severing, then the dream is dead in the water. The dream of a more beautiful world for all of us is dead in the water if we keep severing. If we keep severing. Because we're all here together. That's not going to change. And we have to learn how to be here together beautifully. And that is going to take some serious work. Ooh, that was a lot. So, holding the dream of what's possible right now includes a lot of heavy lifting, psychically, emotionally, energetically, physically. It includes a lot of being uncomfortable. It includes coming into relationship with death on a number of levels. Not necessarily physical bodily death, but the death of our ideas, the death of our unconscious ideas, the death of our prejudices, the death of our privileges as white people, the death of our victimhood, the death of our powerlessness, the death of our societies and institutions. There are just so many deaths in the wings if we are really going to make this shift from a world based on power through dominion and violence to a world of power and communion and beauty. There's a lot of territory between those things. So to hold the dream of what's possible right now, we have to be able to meet death with love. We have to be able to meet the horrors of the world from a rooted place that embodies our values. We have to be able to stay resourced for the long haul. We have to let go of reactivity. We have to let go of reactivity. We have to be able to stay grounded. We have to be able to stay energized. And we have to be able to stay connected. Because that's the point. That's the point. Society severs, separates, divides us, turns us against each other, decimates our kinship with ourselves, each other, and life. And that's the point of this transition. We're coming home to each other. The end of racism, the end of sexism, the end of human supremacy, the end of all of these things is about coming back into relationship with the things around us instead of severing and pushing them away, making them other. It's about coming back together and living together in a respectful, life-affirming, beautiful way. It's about going from being the consumer, the devastating consumer that the caterpillar is, to the beautiful pollinator that the butterfly is. It's about going from being life-denying to life-giving on a broad scale, at a fundamental level. And it's going to take some heavy lifting. It's going to take some heavy lifting. So we've got, there's so much more to say. Like we've got to stay with joy. We have to stay with joy. One of our resources has to be joy, or we're never going to make it. It has to be pleasure, or we're never going to make it. If it's only pain and struggle and strife, we're not going to make it. There has to be joy. There has to be celebration. There has to be shared love and pleasure, It has to be fun. It has to feel good to come back together. Not always, but there has to be that in there. There has to be the moments when we just laugh and love the magnificence of ourselves and each other and this incredible earth of which we're a part, or else the fuel will not be there. Oh, and there's so much more I could say, but I think I'm going to stop there because it's been about 45 minutes and I'm sure that's enough for now. So holding the dream of what's possible for now has everything to do with staying resourced, staying in love, staying present, staying connected, staying grounded, and letting the transformation guide us. I love you so much. I have so much faith, not hope. I don't have hope. I have so much faith. I have a bone-deep knowing that we have just crossed an incredibly important threshold and we are in the transition to something better for everyone. I have knowing, and I'm so excited for it. And I'm so excited that we're here together. And I'm so excited that you've listened to this entire broadcast right now. Thank you so much. Blessings to you. If I can support you in your walk at all, let me know. I do body work, I do physical training, I do counseling, I sing music, I write things. You can check out everything I do at mytreewolf.com. You can be in touch with me here in a comment to connect. So many blessings to you. You are doing so well with something so huge and so strange and so profound. And you are doing so, so well. I know you are. Keep at it. I love you. Good night.